everybody. Hello. How's everyone? I hope everybody's doing good. We're back. Um, Excited to do this watercolor. Actually, in this one, the paper will be not um, horizontally, but vertically, or in other words, um, portrait format. Although we're not gonna do a portrait, um, it's gonna be on the portrait um, kind of arrangement, where the bottom over here is here and the top is over here. So I have to keep it in the camera. Here are my colors. So this is what you need. You need your watercolors. This is really essential. Um, Watercolor paper. This is the, I always emphasize watercolor paper because it's, you can only do watercolor paper effectively on watercolor paper. Um, it needs to absorb the water. It needs to be thick. It needs to have a weight in it. Um, and then your brush, and then your water. Okay, I have 2 containers, but you need water. Okay. I just want to show you here something that they sell, and it's these brushes that you could put water inside of them. You see there's water here, and you squeeze the plastic and the water comes out. So your brush always carries water. Um, but yes, you get some control of it, but you don't get as much as picking up the water in traditional watercolor. So um, I do recommend it, but maybe at some point you want your brush to be dry, and you really can't get it dry as much when the water is in here. I don't know. It has its purposes and it works if you know how to manage and your experience with it, I guess. But it's just a thing that carries water. The thing is, they do it that is screw backwards than what the rule is, right? Anyway, so today we're gonna do a monochromatic watercolor, which we're gonna use on only one color. Our last one of our one of our last videos was also monochromatic. We used blue, and we saw reflection and some. I think it was like a couple of rows of mountains and sky, and but today we're gonna emphasize on vegetation, and um, how to make it also just like the previous one, be representing um, distance and background, foreground. So you'll see how we build this this painting. The color we're gonna use last time was blue. This time is green. So I can make sure to clean. I gotta clean this up here with the red, because when I say green, it is green. Okay. Yes, it could get maybe a little bit of yellow um, or maybe blue, or that's how we will darken it with the blue. But that's because those two colors are in green, right? Yellow and blue are are what create green. But any other color, we want to really stay away from it, because the point of the painting is to use just one color. So ready? Get your paper and put it on the vertical way. Um, we don't need to draw per se, but in a moment I'm going to point out exactly where things are going to be. So what we would paint, it's a scene also with some water reflection or insinuating. A lot of watercolor painting is insinuation, right? The viewer um, completes the painting for us because we try to not be too detailed, but we put the enough information that the viewer can discern what is that we're representing. Okay, so follow me here, even though I'm not drawing it. Almost halfway in the paper, a little bit under half of the paper is we want to set the ground where trees are going to grow, okay, mostly to the right, pine trees. And then there's going to be two rows, one where it's in the background very lightly, just like the mountains. Remember, we got to, again, I'm going to say it, I keep saying it, we work light to dark. So we work with that first layer, and then um, the next layer is another set of trees, a little more opaque. In front of it to the right, we can see the line that defines where the ground is, which kind of tell us that under that could be more ground, but we're going to create some type of reflection effect that allows us to discern that it's maybe some water or lake, and that's going to be wet on wet, to make sure that it's very diffuse. As simple as that. That's it. We're going to keep mostly things happening here to the right. Okay, let's get started. So we got to be really careful with this first row of trees. So I'm going to kind of clearly define just visually where that line is here to the right mostly. And obviously there's going to be color we're going to later put on top of that, but it's just so we can help ourselves um, locate ourselves. So I'm going to put the brush where I can see visually the half of the paper is, which is around here, and bring it down a little bit. So maybe about here is where we will draw that line. Let's see. Okay. There's my line that helps me visualize where things are going to be. I could bring it a little lower, actually. I'm sure we could bring that down. And then I'm going to start in the middle exactly of the paper, because that first layer that's very light, it dies out towards the left. Remember how I said most things will be here towards the right? That's also visually more busy and more clear. So as we do this background um, diffuse row of vegetation or trees, we want them to kind of disappear to the left. But we know that the middle is still visual. We're still going to see it, right? If you feel you put too much pigment, um, don't grab more, and just go ahead and um, grab water and use the water to diffuse what you just did. So the key here is to not really worry too much about the body of this. Um, it's mostly the top here. This is where we're gonna start discerning like pine trees tops. And the way we do that is kind of like a triangle. You see coming down and making sure that it's built going up. So basically, um, you see that how subtle. I just want to show you focus. You barely can see it, but um, you can see how those top are like a pyramid or a triangle. The bottom thicker, thinner than the top, but it's barely visible. And I'm gonna make them kind of vanish to the left here. But let's build a tall one over here to the right. And it's okay if on the right they become a little more clear with the color, meaning um, that there's more green. Even though you're diffusing here, you know, the green, careful with the amount of water in this area because um, what happens is that if you put too much water here, remember that here's where the right is where other things are going to be on top. So we will have to wait, which is okay, for this area to dry. But if you put too much water, even if it dries, it's going to be hard to work with it and make things that are more defined. So I'm going to put one more pine tree here and one more pine tree here, thicker. This one is going to be much bigger, and I'm not afraid of grabbing a lot of green, which I know my brush look is carrying. See, see that it's a little more darker, but and that now makes me over here to this side be more gentle with diffusing with water. What's happening over here? Vanish, 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 vanish with water until it vanishes. There you go. The tops I could still define a little, but I can also okay. Something has too much color. Don't be afraid to use water. Yep. You see how there's a row of oh, this allows me here now to bring maybe this a little lower. Okay. So it's a mess of green. It's okay. The key is that over here to the left, you bring it to basically disappear. This is with water. So less color, less color, less color as you move to the left until with the water is there's nothing. And then keep here on the top very light those triangles that are busy like this, representing the top of the pine trees. Maybe this one needs a little more body. Okay, so we have to let that dry. Um, Basically, the only other thing we need to do is to, once it dries, do that second layer on top here to the right that is a little more darker, where the trees are more defined, and make the diffusion here down here of the water. Now, I hope you also, and I'm sorry I didn't say this at the beginning, have some napkin or paper towels or tissue close to you. Um, okay. Um, Something I want to say we could have done is to leave maybe some little gaps here of white of the paper, but I wanted to really make this a very dense forest type of image. Um, Down here, we're gonna, while this weight, you see, is still wet. Um, it's wet enough. Sorry, it's dry enough that I can touch it if, um, but I can feel it's cold, so it's still wet. But if it was wet, don't touch it if yours, because your fingers are going to pick up the paint. I knew that was not going to happen by looking at it, so just be careful. But we're going to tackle here now the diffusion of the water reflection, and purposely we're going to leave some lines. In this case are going to be lines of white, very thin lines of white, maybe about here. And that what that represents is kind of like the ripples of reflection, and really let us know that down here what we see is water. Okay. This happens over here. I'm going to show you. You see this line. Let me wait for the paper to get focused. There you go. You see this line here of green of the water being diffused. Let's erase that with a wet brush. Not too wet, but that's because there was a patch here of water that came and made this outline. Okay, so not too wet, but we want to break that apart so it's not as clearly visible like that. Yep, it's okay. All right, so let's tackle the reflection down here. And you see, I'm not worried much of what this line, how it looks, because there's going to be a top soon on things on top of this soon. All right, so I'm gonna mix, even though you have green, this is what I wanna encourage you, even though you have the color green, um, try to create green with your yellow and blue. And I asked that because it's gonna be a different green what's gonna come up. And some of you may have different greens depending if of the brand of your um, palette. But yeah, the green you're gonna get mixing your blue and your yellow is gonna guarantee be different than the one they bring you green, just because um, they use maybe other different pigments to create that green. You see, um, I'm going to leave that here for my, so what's going to be up here. And with the reflection, I may use what we already have. Let's see. I'm going to be careful not to use too much color on the diffusion down here. But remember how I say it was going to be wet on wet? Let's wet that area. And for that is when I ask you to use, if you can, you could use your brush, but I'm using a napkin that carries a lot of water. That's going to be sucked in by the paper. Well, it's going to be sucked in by the paper. Yeah, it's going to take some time, but it's going to wet the paper faster. So we don't have a huge brush to wet the paper, but we do have tissue. So what I just did now, watch how the paper shines and reflects. That shows that the paper is very wet. You see that? Um, Let me find it right there. The reflection of the light. Where are you? Right. Um, let's not wait too long. If we wait too long, it dries up, right? So I said I was gonna leave some lines here. I'm gonna start down here and then build those lines after. That's a lot of color. So then I get it out of my brush and disperse this. You see how it's a more diffuse effect? Just want to show you that close up. Make sure your brush stroke is horizontal, going side to side, because that's how water is going to behave, right? If you see water or waves, they are horizontal. Um, yes, they move vertically, but you know what I'm talking about. The main shape of it. So if you throw a rock, the ripples, even though they're gonna move in the water, because the water uh, by gravity stays at a certain level, and that level is horizontal. So keep your brushstroke horizontal, and it helps us understand that this is water. If you color this um, vertically, it will be a mess and very confusing. So on that note, I'm making sure, even though in the diffusion, I'm making sure that um, there's a little bit of those lines shown. You know, you can actually discern lines in here. But the end of those lines over here to the left, I'm making sure that they do blur and disappear because I want them also to vanish. You see, over here to the left. I'm gonna go up, and this is where we have to make sure we leave some gaps. Okay, this is gonna be a little challenging because this is wet and the water tends to vanish in it, but we go here, leave that little gap. First, we're gonna just leave gaps. Um, a big gap here to the right, okay? And then I know that here in the middle is gonna be busy and heavy with a tree or a couple of trees. So this middle right here, I could put more color in this center, you see, in this center. Otherwise, the rest, leave it like that. I'm going back here to define this outline. So, and then um, I'm cleaning my brush and using just water, a little bit of water, to disappear these edges here of these lines to the left. Remember, everything has to disappear. So this is a clean brush in which the water Ta-da! Vanishes. Now I'm gonna make sure with this darker green that I define this a little more and maybe get darker as you come closer to this line here. Don't worry of getting more color because this is gonna be very pronounced. Oop. Okay, put in a little more darker color just towards the middle, not the edges, the middle. Perfect. And as it's already wet, just the moment that is, if you see my finger going into the paper, is because I know it's just very wet, and my finger helps diffuse that pigment that I just put in there, if that makes sense. But the lines are a little curved towards down, but it's okay. You want to keep them straight. Sorry about that. You want to keep them straight, parallel to the paper. Um, so sorry about that. That's very important to do. Yeah, I think they kind of are a little. Okay, so now all we have to worry about is the layer of the trees that are going to be here, foreground, kind of. Because really, foreground is here. If this is water, foreground is the part that is closest to us here. But I mean the second layer of trees on top of these ones, which are going to be a little more darker. And if I put any color, if I emphasize a color in this next layer, I should put a little bit of that color down here in the reflection according to it. So it really makes sense that this is being reflected. And actually, we will, I believe, with some yellow. So let's start this new layer and make sure those pine trees are more defined. Before we get to that, I'm gonna make a row here, especially towards the left here, define very low of kind of bushes, because besides the pine trees, there's other vegetation down here, right? So watch. The way we're gonna do the bushes is just a little mountain define of like um, green. But here is where we could take advantage and make sure that our line it is straight. Okay, so the way we could do that, if you have another piece of paper, if you don't have another piece of paper, uh, any paper, it could be an envelope, card, whatever. The key is to line it up here to one of the sides. So you see how the line is lined up. I line up, I put it here, and now I can see how my line needs to be straight. I don't want to go too much to the right, even though we know this is darker, because our pine trees are going to be here, and I will wet this area if I do. But you see the bushes now, and it's all good. Okay. Putting more color in the body because it's very dark. Perfect. And our line should be straight. I'm gonna do another video next time also of another color. More likely will be orange, but I don't know. Um, with the blue, this one is green, next one orange, and we'll close it up with that. Um, but this allows us just to know, to understand just with one color how do we play around to discern what we represent. Usually, with no experience, you just color you do something and it's that color and it's the same value or weight in pigment, and yes, you color that object, but you never discern um, other aspects of it, light, dark, shade, right? So with one coloring watercolor, with these exercises where you can actually have a whole picture of with different objects actually, as long as they differentiate between themselves by tone. Some things are darker, some things are lighter, some things um, blend in to show shadow or shade, you know. So it makes us a little more aware of um, what is capable to do. Okay, so I'm gonna do about 2 or 3 pine trees, and they're gonna be very well defined and darker than what we already done. But in that darkness, I want to also differentiate between themselves. So I use all the green that I created. So I'm going to create a little more. Clean my brush. Here is the green from the palette, but I'm going to up here create the green from the yellow and the blue that comes with the palette, remember? So I put yellow. Make sure you keep your brush with that color when you go in that area, in that pigment, or clean. So you see this yellow? I'm making sure that now I clean my brush to get my blue. That way my blue doesn't get... And the blue is very dark, so I don't need as much blue as the yellow. You need more yellow than blue to create the green. You see? So we have our green, and I'm going to leave a little bit of the yellow in that corner, because we're going to use more yellow to emphasize yellow in our tree. So let's start with a tree over here to limit what we're going to be doing to the right. So again, it's kind of like a line up to here, because I want to still be able to see what we did back here. Don't cover it entirely. So that's our pine tree, and the body is richer or rich. I'm making the body is thicker as it comes down. It joins another pine tree that's going to be here, but that's a good beginning. We don't really care much of how the edges at the bottom ends, but there's another one almost the same size here. Let's make this tip very narrow and pointy. I think that's what defines a pine tree very well, that you say, okay, that is a pine tree. Um, if you notice, I'm using the same green I created, but I'm going to add a little bit of the green from the palette just to distinguish both pine trees. And then there's a third one in which I want to really distinguish the part of the trunk. So the trunk will be here. But to show the trunk, that means in this area or sometime in the tree, we leave it open so we can actually see the trunk. And I want to make sure I show that pointy aspect of it here to the top. I'm making the lines come down now, like but that doesn't mean they don't become also like a big ball of mass of green when it's very busy, like over here, let's say, you see. Okay. And then when we come down here, I show some of the trunk and it comes back down here. And then we could actually do more. Oh yeah, yellow. I said I was gonna add yellow. So let's add the yellow in the bottom as a aspect of the bushes that are back here or under here. So if I put yellow there and maybe on some of the parts of the tree, I'm putting straight yellow because I know this is still wet. So this yellow I'm putting down is mixing with the blue. Um, but I'm gonna put it also down in the reflection, remember, of the water. So maybe a little bit of it here like this. Oop, that's a lot. And the fact that it's in lines like this again help us understand that this is water. I want it more diffuse here in the water. This is a lot, but it's okay. All right. Um, Now we're gonna put darker green on top of some areas here. So I get, especially the trunk. I want the trunk to be darker like that, and maybe around here gets a little more darker. The you see, and with that, if you notice what I did, if you didn't see me, I did got blue. So let me I got blue. I got some blue to put some darkness um, around this area here. But you want to make sure that that blue also gets in parts kind of diffused, so it doesn't diffuse. I mean, it doesn't stand out as just a bulk of just dark blue. I want to have more body in that tree, in that big pine tree. Remember that we did last here. So, but I don't want to erase the yellow that we put down. So we're gonna have to wait for this to dry, or put the yellow above it. Maybe some yellow here. I'm trying to keep this line very straight, and it just got very low. So um, See, I use my finger to diffuse the color to kind of vanish, not vanish, like blend in. Same thing here. I think I fixed the stream, the line being a little bit more straight, because that the fact that it's very straight allows us to ground where the trees are coming from. And if you notice, the I put a little bit of blue on the trunk here, and I put a tiny little bit up here, and that represents. And if I put a little bit more over here, and maybe here, it's like showing a little bit more of the trunk. You know, and that's it. Look at it. We were very gentle. I think if I clean my brush, or if you have another brush that is clean, you could wet it, not too wet, but wet it, and see anything over to this side that things are vanishing that's kind of rough or too dark, and blend it in, soften it, look a little even more. So I'm softening um, anything that stands out. I could even soften it even more, you see, so it vanish more gently. It's less rough, the transition. There you go. So there's no marks. You see how this is a little more softer? I can see something here. Let's see what it is. Yeah, okay. This line will vanish it. That's it. That's our painting. It's actually, if you when you really look at it, yes, it's towards the right, but it's actually kind of cropped in. But the fact that it's done in a horizontal, sorry, vertical way, it's great. We could actually soften this here a little better too, over here to the right. Let's see. Even leaving that white, um, this can be softened out. There you go. And there you go. This can be softened, this line. And that's it. This is very wet. Let's see. No, it's not that much. So if it's not too wet, your palette, you could always close it. Not worry that the paint is going to fall on the others. It will dry on its own. Yep. And this could be green that you could use later. So I can actually close this, and later, next time I open it, this it will be dry, but with water, it will reactivate and I can still use it. If it were very wet, right, you can see the water. Um, when you're done, you have to clean it before you close it. Otherwise, the water will, yeah, it messed all this up here. There's some green on my yellow. I think, clean or wipe. Let's see in the pigment here. That way we could keep our yellow as pure as we can. There you go. But I hope you enjoyed the painting. Even though there's some yellow, it's in the green tone. You see, it's still green, it's not yellow. So we use green, is my point. I'm going to bring it closer so you can see it. And then, again, it's a video that you can easily watch again, do this painting again, maybe create a card to give out, make a gift. make a message over here to the left, uh, or write a poem or notes or not notes, thoughts. Um, but let's start from the bottom. Look, here's the water reflection, very gentle, um, horizontal lines, but diffuse, especially here towards the left. Ta-da. Then we have the line that defines this is grounded, this is ground now, it's not water, and the bushes to the left, but the pine trees start showing up, which is the second layer, right? It's darker above the first layer. So those are pine trees, and then in behind that is that first um, painting we did of very diffuse green, very extremely light diffuse green that is diffused strongly to the left until it disappears, and above it is the top of the trees. All right. So thank you, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe. Keep painting.